Boom. Good morning. Welcome everybody to the Crypto Mining Show, your one-stop shop for all news cryptocurrency related from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner. I am the host, Blind Run, and today we are going to be hopefully launching on Spotify, I think, or this weekend. So if you guys like to listen in your car, etc., make sure that you go ahead and check out the Spotify links that I will amend the description with later on today or tomorrow, sometime around then. I'm waiting to get confirmation on all of it, but uploads are done and the work is done. I'm excited to have another basically revenue stream as well as audience stream and another way for everybody to basically participate in the community. And that's about it. My favorite part, of course, is doing this live so we can do the questions and answers at the end of the show every day on YouTube, Monday through Friday, 9:45 a.m. Central Time to 10:45 a.m. Central Time. Today, we are going to be talking about the Iris XE Max review that was released by Igor's lab. It looks like we have some information there. Of course, not really anything cryptocurrency related. It's a very low-powered, low-cost GPU, and we'll just have to see what happens once it gets launched to the public. We have essentially more information, a release date on the 5800 X3D from Ryzen, AMD specifically. The curious thing here is the way they're handling the cache, and we're just going to cover the basic specifications, kind of talk about how that's going to affect mining. Then we're going to be talking about Bitcoin jumping to 40K as Putin sees positive shift in Ukraine talks. And then we have an opinion piece, America's quiet default, seizing Russian holdings of American debt risks the role of U.S. in the international system and opens the door to gold and Bitcoin. We also have a self-leak. This isn't really like one of those things where a leaker is doing it, but we have essentially a self-leak from Goldshell on their KD Box Pro. We're going to run through the numbers. We have a little video here that shows the hash rate. I don't know that we have power necessarily in there, but we should be able to at least see what the revenue would be on this new Kadena box from Goldshell. Then we're going to talk about essentially the ETH merge and a little bit of a delay on the actual test net that's going on. And then we'll talk about the rest of the mining performance. Thanks everybody for bringing things to my attention on Twitter so that we can discuss them during the show. I appreciate that a lot. You can also share in, of course, the Rocket Chat. We're going to get into it right after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is BT Miners. Purchasing mining equipment online can be dangerous. With all of the fake storefronts and scams, it can be hard to find a reliable source. That's why when BT Miners reached out for a channel sponsorship, I started by verifying that ordering and delivery went smoothly with a purchase of my own. If you are looking to purchase ASICs hardware from Bitcoin to Dogecoin miners, they are available for purchase on bt-miners.com. BT Miners is a trusted source by both ASICMinerValue.com and CryptoMiner.com. Follow the affiliate link in the description and use promo code FREESHIPPING2021 for free shipping on your order. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to start off with, of course, the new Iris XE Max review from Igor's lab. This will be very brief. I just want to bring it to everybody's attention so you're aware that it's out there. You can go dig through it and see what interesting details are there. From the gaming perspective, it doesn't look that great, as you'll see. It's really a 720p card, which is an interesting release. Think along the lines of the RX 550. So here's the review. It was released, I believe, yesterday, day before, on March 9th, 2022. So it says, so the time has finally come. Today I can show you the detailed benchmarks with Gettr Iris XE Max Index V2, Intel's DG1, which can offer a first taste of Intel's Arc Alchemist series, which is based on the newer DG2 GPU family. However, this is not yet on the market. CR freely available retail card of the DG1 has aroused my desires. After all, the DG1 GPUs are initially only available to software developers, but eventually found their way into discrete DIY desktop market later, the Iris Xe brand. So think of it like we talk about the BMZ one for the Bitcoin ASIC and the BMZ2, where the BMZ one wasn't really released to anybody, and the first generation that will be released to the public will be the BMZ2. It's kind of the same case here between the DG1 and the DG2. Now, the testing obviously is going to be difficult, as they discuss here, because of drivers and other situations that are just going to cause it to basically not run every game that they tested, nor is it going to necessarily utilize the full potential of the GPU because of, well, that issue. But as you can see here, for the specifications, what we have is on the DG1, the one that they tested, you have 96 execution units at a 1.65 gigahertz clock with 4 gigabytes of memory, and that's going to be the LPDDR4X. That is going to be upgraded on DG2 to the GDDR6X, and that will have an effect on bandwidth. So for memory, on mining, which is what we care about, your memory bus is 128-bit, and that provides a total bandwidth of 68 gigabytes per second. Whereas on DG2, we're going to be looking at 64-bit of GDDR6 at the low end for 112 gigabytes per second. And then we would have potentially, you know, a bigger model that we've talked about that would have the 128-bit bus. If we scroll down, though, he talks about the drivers, like I said, some of the driver issues, and basically some crashes that went on and so on. And then he kind of gets into the features, the components, the cooler, and then the testing. And if we take a look at the testing here, as far as the performance goes, let's click through it. What you'll notice is that it's a little bit better than the RX 550 in most cases, right? So this is Borderlands 3. If we took a look at Horizon Zero Dawn, we're going to see, once again, pretty much on par with the RX 550. And keep in mind, this is the DG1, and this is at 720. Now, there is a 1080p test that they ran in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. That one's just a little bit better than the 550, 45 frames per second. If we go down, let's go ahead and look at the 1080p for Wolfenstein Youngblood, which would be Vulkan. And in Vulkan, it performs actually quite a bit better than quite a bit worse. Sorry. No, quite a bit better than the RX 550, excuse me. It's right here at the 37 frames and then the 18 on there. So in Vulkan, is performing a little bit better, probably because just the nature of the engine being more friendly to, I guess, well, basically devices that don't have fully working drivers, pretty much. But the big one for the miners, of course, is the power consumption. So the DG1 in form of the Gungnir Iris Xe Max Index V2 consumes an average of just under 30 watts of electrical power via the single supplying PCIe slot. Though this value can fluctuate between 24 and 34 watts for the entire card depending on game and resolution. If you exclude the frugal memory and include voltage converter and board losses as well as other small consumers, you could calculate a discount of about 10 watts. This would result in a value between 14 and 24 watts for the pure chip. Now, in comparison, of course, we would need to compare that to the RX 550. I thought I had the tab pulled up, but I do not. But let's go ahead and do that. We should be able to pull that up here. And so on the RX 550, the rating is 50 watts and the consumption is at 47 watts. So in comparison, of course, you're talking about, you know, more power for like, you know, a 50% reduction, or more processing power for a 50% reduction in power or whatever. So you're 30 watts versus the 47. It's really good as far as power consumption goes, especially for a DG1. So it makes me really excited to see what the second generation is going to provide. These things could be beasts. Obviously, we have the issue of the 4 gigabytes on these particular models, the lower end models that are going to restrict it from mining essentially Ethereum itself. However, there are possibilities for other algorithms there, including, of course, Ethereum Classic, even if you want to stay on ETH hash, or something like Flux or Ravencoin, so on. And the power consumption is looking really, really good. So I'm excited to see what the larger cards with more memory actually are going to get here. The ones with the bigger 128-bit bus on something like, of course, the GDDR6, hopefully the newer GDDR6, and we get this same low power consumption, because most of that power consumption typically comes from the core side of things. And we will see a mining beast in the making, because I believe what we were talking about previously is those bigger cards are going to be still like sub 75 watts. And we could be seeing like something like 30 mega hash a second for basically, I would say, probably between 40 to 50 watts. It's going to be definitely lower than like the RX 6600, for example, from what we can tell. And it's exciting stuff. So if you guys want to see the full review, definitely check out the description, because we focus on it from the mining perspective. What we are worried about, of course, is going to be that memory, and that's what we cover here. So next we have a new AMD CPU, coming out on the 15th of March. And this one's pretty exciting too. We did talk about the new Intel chips adding more cache to their GPUs. Cache is something that is getting added pretty much to all PC components. Intel has been a little bit behind on adding larger caches to their CPUs. And if you guys haven't been familiar, larger caches in recent algorithms on the CPU side have definitely improved, of course, the mining capabilities, which is why when you saw people building CPU mining rigs for like Raptorium, for example, we were seeing essentially AMD as the only option. There are some caveats to this, and one would be Coin, for example, which isn't as heavily focused on cache and more focused on core. And therefore, you know, just depending on the algorithm, it doesn't always matter, but for the algorithms that it matters for, cache is a huge deal. And what we see coming out from AMD is a refresh on their line that includes basically a 5800X that will have a massive amount of cache. And we are going to see it on the 15th of March. So AMD unveils mainstream Ryzen AM4 desktop CPUs on the 15th of March, launch on April 4th, and includes the 5700X refresh, 5600, 5500, 4600G, 4500, and 4100. The most exciting one is going to be the 5800X3D. So AMD has a lot of Ryzen AM4 desktop CPU announcements coming in the next few weeks. That includes Zen 3D, Zen 3, and Zen 2 chips. We have confirmed with our sources when these chips will be officially announced and available in the retail segment. In our latest post, we reported the specs, prices, and configuration that these new AMD Ryzen 5000 and 4000 AM4 desktop CPUs will be packing with themselves. The whole point of the new line is to offer more options to mainstream users who haven't had anything new since Zen 3 launched. So here we go. From what we are able to gather, the Ryzen 7 5800X3D will be officially announced with its pricing in the coming days, but availability isn't expected until the 20th of April. As far as other Ryzen mainstream chips, those are expected to be announced on the 15th of March, but will come to retail shelves slightly earlier on the 4th of April. So summing up the launch plans, you have the 5800X3D on the 20th of April. You have the 5700X, 5600, 5500, and the corresponding mobile chips here on the 4th of April, and then the 5700, the 5100, which would be a nice low-end option, and the 4700 availability in April, so not fully confirmed as far as those go. Let's talk about this chip right here. This is the exciting one, especially for the miners. First up, we have the only Warhol chip that is based on the Zen 3D core architecture. This is the AMD Ryzen 7 5800X3D. The CPU is going to offer 8 cores and 16 threads and 100 megabytes of combined cache, thanks to its additional 64 megabytes of 3D stacked SRAM design. Clock speeds will be maintained at 3.4 gigahertz base and 4.5 gigahertz boost with a TDP of 105 watts. Really good power consumption too here. Recent reports suggest there won't be any overclocking support enabled in the 3D V-cache part. So I think that means specifically you can overclock the core, but for the 3D V-cache, there won't be any overclocking. Well, just heads up. As for the pricing, the CPU is going to feature the same MSRP as the 5800X at $449 US, which means that the non-3D chip is going to get a price cut down to either $399 or even lower. And the 5800X has been mining really well. I'm mining on one right now. So it's definitely a nice price cut if you're looking at mining. But for the $50 more, I would presume that the massive cache increase here, which you can see on the spec sheet, is going to make the 5800X3D worth the money from the perspective of mining cryptocurrency. Because as you can see here, we have 64 megabytes plus the 32 megabytes. This is L2 and L3 cache. Talking about 100 megabytes of cache, though, compared to, well, to be specific, 96 megabytes of cache. But over the current 5800X, which is 36 megabytes of cache. The other things that are going to be interesting on the refresh side is going to be the amount of cache that you get in some of these lower end chips. Specifically going to be talking about like the 5700X, which depending on the price point, it says $299 US. It has the same amount of cache, or a little bit more cache, actually 4 megabytes more of cache than the Ryzen 7 5800, and that'll have 36 megabytes of cache compared to the 32 megabytes of cache. It will have the same 8-core 16 thread, and is supposed to come in at $299 US. This should mine just as good, if not better, on a majority of algorithms that are cache heavy than the 5800 and come in at $100 cheaper. What? That doesn't even make sense to me, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. You are also going to have that 65 watt TDP. Now, on the 5800X3D, it is important to note that you do have a higher power consumption than like the 5700X, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I definitely want to get some for testing on the channel because these are always fun to test out. As far as, so Epic Chips Ryzen Threadripper has been discontinued apparently. I watched a Linus Tech Tips video on that. That's pretty disappointing, especially from, the mining line of things. That being said, those chips were so expensive that it was hard to really justify purchasing any of those for mining, unless you went a little bit older and you weren't cache heavy. So one of the things that performs pretty surprisingly well that you can get a little cheaper now that works on Veriscoin very good is the 1950X, which I'm actually mining Veriscoin with because it does perform so well on it, thanks to the amount of cores and that sort of thing, the 8-core 16 thread. And the pricing on that's getting low. So, on the used market, the 1950X does have some use cases outside of just general computing, actually specifically for mining. That's something to look at, but only if it really comes in at the right price point. And really the big problem there, of course, is motherboard supply for those chips, the first gen Threadrippers. Let's go ahead and talk about Bitcoin touching 40K. Right now it's back down to 38,694. It does seem to be doing, excuse me, wake up. It does seem to be doing a little bit better than Ethereum in performance from what I've been seeing, but I think a lot of that has to do with what's going on here with everything. But Bitcoin jumps to 40K as Putin sees positive shift in Ukraine talks. European equity benchmarks and U.S. index futures extended gains, while major cryptocurrencies jumped as much as 7.6%. Bitcoin regained the $40,000 level in the past hour after reports of positive developments in talks between Russia and Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin said there was positive movement in negotiations which were happening on a daily basis. Russia faces sanctions from Western countries, among others, as leaders worldwide condemn the invasion of Ukraine. Putin's comments buoyed global markets. S&P 500 futures added 1.31%, and futures on the tech-heavy NASDAQ 100 rose 1.65%. Sentiment in Europe was stronger, with Germany's DAX jumping 3.41% and Stoxx Europe 600 gaining 2.09%. Crypto markets were mixed. Bitcoin jumped from 38,000 in the European morning hours to slightly over 40,000 as Putin's comments went public. Ethereum, on the other hand, added 2.4% in the past hour along XRP and Solana's Sol, while Polkadot led gains with an 8% rally, pretty surprising, in the past 24 hours. Ukraine's worsening situation has rippled, has it XRP'd across global markets. India saw an exodus of foreign capital to the tune of billions of dollars this week, while Brent crude touched $140 a barrel. Demand for nickel alongside a short squeeze pushed prices of the metal to a record $101,000, while gold touched $2,070 on Tuesday, a level previously seen in August of 2020. So obviously what we are seeing still is a correlation between traditional stocks and, of course, cryptocurrency. Except one little difference, which is the fact that it does seem that the initial pump on the cryptocurrency side seems to be a little bit higher than the stock market. So 7.6% jump on the initial compared to in the stock markets, really in the US, between 1.3 and 2%. And in, of course, the European area, 3.41% at the top. So really almost double on the Bitcoin side of things when we saw the reaction to this. There are other contributing factors here, of course, that need to be kept in mind. And it's not always just what it seems on the surface, especially as it pertains to cryptocurrency. So, always do more research, always pay attention, that sort of thing. The next one's really fun. I want to get into it kind of near the end, though. So I am going to move it down. We are going to actually talk about Goldshell Miner and the KD Box Pro. And they tweeted this out yesterday. And basically we have some information on the KD Box Pro right here. It says, the trailer is ready. Spoiler alert, the first batch of the KD Box Pro have RGB fans. Stay tuned for more KD Box Pro release and design. That's the secret I'll never tell. Anyways. Here we go. Oh, you guys probably won't be able to see it. So there's a link to it down in the description. What I'm seeing is 2605 gigahash. So 2,605 gigahash a second. Currently, no real power recordings on that symbol. Okay, you guys were able to see it when I went full screen. So perfect. So 2,605 hash or gigahash a second. We can go over here and calculate that out on the mining profitability. We don't have a wattage, so we can get revenue though. So let's calculate out the revenue on Kadena. Basically, for 24 hours, you would make 1.9 KDA, which would be equivalent to $13 US. For a week, you're looking at $88 a week. And for 30 days, for a month, you would be looking at $421 US. Keeping in mind, this is revenue, not profit after power. And so that's something important to keep in mind. If we were looking at, let's say, an ROI of 2 years, which is probably what it would be around, let's say 365 times 2. Let's guesstimate cost. That would be 730 days for 2 years. And then basically we would multiply that, or hold on. Yeah, multiply that. 730, yeah, times $13. This could really end up being close to $9,500. Potentially. You know, we'll have to wait to see. I didn't actually see an announcement of pricing on this one at all. So we really have to wait a little bit more unless I've missed something. And somebody is telling me, Crypto Mikkel says we do have more information on their website. So thanks for letting me know in chat. I'll go ahead and scroll down and we'll get their information on the bottom. Box series, KD Box Pro. Okay, cool. So it's listed on the website now. So 230 watts. Holy moly. That seems pretty good. I'm not going to lie. Do we have pricing? Still don't see pricing necessarily. But we can update that into our calculator. 230 watts. Calculate that out. And we can get revenue after power. $12.50 a day. Not bad at all. Not bad at all, depending on the price. Now, my assumption is we'll go ahead and check the shop and make sure it's not listed here somewhere. LB box, HS box. No. Not listed here yet. So no pricing yet. If we compare it, let's look at, yeah, so the previous Gold or KD box. Let's get a price from them on that. I think it's just this one, right? Protected buys. But we can get an idea. That was $38.99. And the pricing, so the KD box, which is the previous generation, not the Pro, was about $3,900 US at 1.6 terahash a second at 205 watts. And then for the KD Pro, we're looking at basically a whole extra terahash for 25 more watts. And that would probably bump up. Honestly, yeah, I think the price is probably going to be around $6,000 to $7,000 is what I would assume they launch it at. Is that right? Maybe even $6,000 to $8,000. Somewhere in there. But, oh, sorry, I didn't even have that pulled up. My bad. So here you go as far as that. Here's the KD box, 1.6 terahash. What we were looking at earlier was the pricing on their shop page right here for the old KD box. And as far as the main page for the KD Box Pro, you got to go to the products page. Here was the specifications of 2.6 terahash a second at 230 watts. If we calculated that out at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, it was $12.56 a day after power. So, not bad. Not bad at all. For the home ASIC miners, Goldshell is definitely interesting. KD Box seems to be the best investment. Of course, you have to worry about those ASICs if they're outside of Bitcoin, because depending on what the algorithm is and so on, there might not be much else to mine except for one coin. And if that coin dies off, well, you're up a creek without a paddle. You know what I mean? You're just floating and hoping and praying. Let's talk about this opinion piece. America's quiet default. Seizing Russian holdings of American debt risks the role of the U.S. in international system and opens the door for gold and Bitcoin. So this is an opinion piece from CoinDesk. It should be approached as such. I will have opinions on it as well. Amid the dying embers of World War II in an ornate ballroom in New Hampshire, in a New Hampshire resort in July 1944, America gathered the imminent victors of the war and designed a new monetary system. Global currencies would be various weights of the dollar, redeemable for gold held with the U.S. Pretty hilarious. At the time, a British economist spoke up and suggested instead a neutral international settlement medium consisting of a basket of sovereign currencies. This Bancor idea, proposed by a certain John Maynard Keynes, there we go, was overruled by American delegation, which favored the more U.S.-centric dollar-gold standard. From 1944 to 1971, sovereign currencies were simply different weights of the dollar, redeemable by the governments themselves for actual gold at a rate of $35 an ounce. The tether was tenuous, however. The entire system depended on the beneficence of the U.S. government. Beneficence, there we go, of the U.S. government, and its willingness to not overspend, increasing the ratio of dollars to underlying gold. Things came to a head when the U.S. spent extravagantly on President Lyndon Johnson's Great Society and the Vietnam War, and sovereigns began to doubt the veracity of America's promise to redeem currency for gold on demand. In August of 1971, France called America's bluff and dispatched a battleship to retrieve their gold. President Richard Nixon knew the U.S. could not honor its commitments and defaulted on the promise that it held since 1944. The U.S. would no longer honor the peg. A decade of ruinous inflation followed, and the U.S. was only able to stabilize the dollar through enormous rate hikes. In combination with the inventive petrodollar scheme, this latter device saw the U.S. ally with oil producers like the Saudis, guaranteeing them military production in exchange for the exclusive pricing of oil in dollars. Combined with the recycling of profits into U.S. treasuries with a reliable treasury bid secured, faith in the dollar that was lost in Nixon's default was restored. Now, I wanted to point out something here that actually happened recently. I believe it was Venezuela and their Petro. And it was one of the first cryptocurrencies to be banned, actually, in the United States. And it's important to understand why it was banned, especially in context to this article. What Venezuela's Petro is essentially a digital currency, a cryptocurrency that was pegged to the price of a barrel of oil within Venezuela. Now, it didn't mean that oil was already produced. What it was pegged to was the presumed amount of oil in the ground in Venezuela. So it's a little tricky as far as that goes, but it's important to note that really, really, really quickly, the U.S. banned that Petro, and you're not allowed technically as a U.S. citizen to participate in it. Why would that be? Well, the U.S. dollar, like we're seeing, is really pegged to oil, and that would be essentially a threat to the U.S. dollar if you had basically a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the price of oil, right? So what's interesting that should also be noted is things like Pax Gold, which are basically cryptocurrencies that are tied to the price of gold, are not banned in the US. So it is definitely more of a threat to the US to have something pegged to oil than to gold. At least that's what we can kind of extrapolate from the way the government reacts and how quickly they react to these different cryptocurrency ideas and what they're tied to. Other tools facilitated the re-entrenchment of the dollar in overseas commerce. The U.S. funneled its cheap debt into military spending and became the de facto guarantor of the markets globally, ensuring energy and food security for the globe by protecting trade routes with its blue water navy. The U.S. set the rules of the game through their control of the international financial institutions. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, for short-term lending to sovereigns, and the World Bank for long-term development finance. The U.S. maintained an open capital account and allowed their securities market to become a global piggy bank for savers worldwide. Today, the size of publicly traded securities in the U.S. relative to public markets worldwide vastly outweighs its share of global gross domestic product, GDP. U.S. dollars denominate most international trade, even for exchanges occurring outside the U.S., outside the country. U.S. treasuries came to be considered the global risk-free savings device for sovereigns, as the U.S. was presumed to have no default risk whatsoever. The Federal Reserve became the lender of last resort for central banks, willing to create unlimited liquidity to support markets worldwide during times of stress. Even absent the tether to gold, the U.S. dollar thrived as the dominant medium of settlement internationally, and U.S. Treasuries served as the default savings device globally. Around 2014, however, something began to turn. Foreign government purchases of U.S. debt began to stagnate. Even though foreign purchases of treasuries eventually picked up in absolute terms in 2018, they didn't remotely keep up with the expanding scale of the U.S. debt. In short, foreigners who had long supported America's largesse, I don't know that word actually, I have to Google that. Some of these I can read, not pronounce, but read and know the definition. Some of these I don't know either. A gift or money given. Okay. Cool. We got it. Learning together. By eagerly buying its debt. We're buying less and less of our new debt issuance. Foreign ownership of U.S. debt declined from 34% in 2015 to 24% at the end of 2021. China's ownership declined from $1.25 trillion in 2015 to under $1.1 trillion in 2021. To compensate for this diminishing outside interest, the U.S. looked inward for new creditors. The Federal Reserve held around 4% of U.S. debt in 2009. That figure climbed to 19% today. These purchases made with dollars summoned out of thin air come with a giant asterisk. They do not derive from organic demand for our debt. They are only sustainable as long as inflation is tolerably low, which it no longer is. In February, it hit a 40-year high of 7.5%. The exact explanation for the lost appetite among foreigners for U.S. dollars and U.S. debt is hard to pin down. It may have been a delayed reaction from the 2008 crisis, when the Fed made it clear that the ability to print unlimited dollars to support domestic markets at the expense of foreigners. It might have been the aggressive sanctions the U.S. instituted against Russian banks after Russia's invasion of Crimea in 2014. The most economically powerful nation the U.S. had ever targeted in such a manner. Previously, sanctions had been reserved for small, economically unimportant nations. At the time, the U.S. threatened to exclude Russia from the SWIFT international transfer system entirely, but backed down due to the severity of the measure. Russia took the threat to heart, and its central bank divested most of its U.S. Treasury exposure and set up a SWIFT alternative called SPFS. Even as the Russians took steps to free themselves from the dependence on the dollar system, the U.S. wisely walked back from the brink, realizing that American and European banks were hopelessly intertwined with Russian ones. At the time, President Obama laid out a prescient warning regarding the risk to the dollar system that arbitrary exclusions could pose. In 2015, he cautioned in the context of unilateral Iran sanctions. Joe Biden did not heed the warning of his former boss. First, the U.S. seized Afghan central bank assets held in New York and bizarrely handed a large portion over to the plaintiffs in a 9/11 lawsuit. While the seizure may have been predictable, expropriating the savings of ordinary Afghans and distributing them to Americans affected by 9/11, an attack perpetuated by Saudis, is deeply unusual. Partly as a consequence, the Afghan banking system is kneeling over, worsening a humanitarian crisis. Not content with that, Biden then dropped a financial nuke on Russia with the seizure of her reserves. It's important to untangle the perceived immorality of this action, a reaction to an unjust invasion, and its prudence. While seizing Afghan or Russian reserves may feel righteous and just, the immediate effect of such actions is to completely undermine the credibility of dollar debt as an international savings device. The U.S. wants to have its cake and eat it too. We need foreigners to buy our debt so the government can finance its structurally high levels of spending. But we increasingly seek to impose moral conditions on who can hold that debt. The U.S. will find that their creditors are increasingly unwilling to pass these purity tests and will choose to hold a money that doesn't require the owner to comport with Washington's latest political fashions. I mean, look, you guys know where I stand on the way we have to approach cryptocurrency globally and how I feel about specifically cryptocurrency itself being restricted from certain geographical locations. And the thing is it all does kind of tie into this in general. And when you kind of start putting like two and two together, you kind of see where the problem is, right? Which is essentially the US dollar and this like conflated like money game that we play with the whole entire world. And it is true, like you can either do that or you can go ahead and stand the moral ground. If you try to do both, you know, these countries are going to lose faith in the US dollar as a savings, because if we're just going to continue to utilize that as a way to strong arm people into doing what we want them to do on the global stage, it just doesn't work that well, right? It's very interesting. Author Luke Groman pulled no punches, asserting that the Fed and the European Central Bank, ECB, quote, completely discredited sovereign debt as an FX reserve, completely, end quote, adding that the quote, the multi-currency, multipolar world was likely fully born on Wednesday night, end quote. Fed blogger Joseph Wang called the freezes of FX reserves, quote, financial WMDs, end quote. Ooh, that's a strong term. I think that's going maybe a little far. Adding that, quote, foreign sovereigns must now diversify as a matter of national security, and some citizens must now diversify as a matter of self-preservation, end quote. And what I would encourage, of course, is the citizens diversifying as a matter of self-preservation. Because what we're here to fight for is the individual and the individual's financial autonomy. I understand that national security for a lot of these countries and blah, 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 they're going to find other assets out of the US dollar. For you as an individual, for us as an individual, what we're looking for, of course, is that financial autonomy on a peer-to-peer basis. And so I definitely agree with that second portion, which is to diversify as a matter of self-preservation. And that doesn't matter if you live in the US, the UK, China, Russia, whatever. You should also have access to that no matter where you're at. Wang points out that India and China, both of whom voted abstain on the United Nations motion to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, maintain heavily FX-based sovereign reserves that they will now be eyeing uneasily. Russia made the fundamental miscalculation of not realizing all of their foreign fiat reserves were at risk. Other nation states falling afoul of the U.S. will not repeat that mistake. Most notably, the celebrated Credit Suisse interest rate strategist Zoltan Pozsar declared an end to the Bretton Woods II, the post-1971 pure fiat period based on the petrodollar and treasury recycling. Bretton Woods II was built on inside money, and its foundations crumbled a week ago when the G7 seized Russia's FX reserves, he wrote. While the reach of gold bugs and Fed critics might extend only to narrow echo chambers on Twitter, fair point, Pozsar's words reverberate around the financial community. For once, the difference between gold and dollars is starkly clear. Outside of James Bond novels, gold cannot be immobilized at a distance. Dollars and dollar assets can. While not as dramatic as the Nixon shock, the Biden sanction was just as genuine a default. That's one thing, because I talked to my dad, because I'm not actually, like, I wasn't around for, like, that period of time when essentially there's huge lines. The unemployment was, like, really high. Inflation was really high. Everything was rough. And from the perspective of people that lived through that, just to give you an idea, they see that coming now again. So whatever that sphere looked like, if you talk to people that lived through it, they definitely feel that that is what's going to happen now. So I want to make sure that, like, you guys understand that, like, we are probably going to go through some tough economic times here. And even though we're saying it's not as bad, it's too early to really tell, right? Things really didn't get that bad right at that time. It took some time to build up. So just stay prepared and stay frosty and keep aware of what's going on, because there are, correlations. History does repeat itself, and this is definitely a risk, as we can tell. Anyways, rug pulling the Russians, even if warranted, introduced for the first time genuine doubt into the quality of the commitment the U.S. can maintain towards foreign creditors. The prospect of total asset invalidation is an unacceptable tail risk, and any nation state worry of falling foul of U.S. sensibilities, especially as the U.S. becomes ever more capricious and less interested in the well-being of the international sphere it used to govern, will consider diversifying out of the U.S. treasuries and other freezable assets. In 2022, Pozsar's outside money is king. For now, that's gold. But even the former skeptic has some time for its digital analog, concluding, quote, Bitcoin, if it still exists after the war, end quote, will probably benefit from all of this. Do you think Bitcoin will still exist after the war? I think yes. Especially, like, have you guys seen, like, people sending transactions and mining, etc. via ham radios? That's dope. I think that we are definitely going to see Bitcoin exist post this war that's going on, even if it expands larger. The threat, of course, to Bitcoin would be full-on blackouts. We're talking EMPs, that sort of stuff. Is that possible? Sure. What else would be possible if we went way down the rabbit hole and went as extreme as possible? Nuclear. But at that point, humanity doesn't exist, so the existence of Bitcoin is therefore null and void and doesn't really matter. Oh, man. So let's talk about Ethereum, the merge, proof of stake, and delays. And let's clear up some misconceptions so that you guys don't get... essentially, what I want to make sure is that you guys don't get unreasonably bullish on the merge being delayed. There you go. What we have here is a tweet from Marius Van Der. This was thanks to Gettr.eth on Twitter. So huge shout out to him. You can follow him. He did tag me, kind of said LOL. this is funny from the perspective of miners, because what we see here is essentially, to give you guys an idea on the testnet, what they're testing now is the merge itself. So to do this, they do have a proof of work testnet that then they mine to with a couple GPUs, get to a certain block height, and then perform the tested merge. That's what they are working on right now. So to do that, they usually have a set amount of essentially mining that is happening. They will mine to that block and then turn off the GPU and try to stop wherever that is on the testnet. Well, funny story, apparently. Someone is running a GPU miner on that testnet, Kiln, and we have somebody saying, could you please shut it down? Otherwise, the TTD will be reached on the weekend, and I don't want to work another weekend. We are aiming for the merge mid next week, but rogue miners keep pushing blocks too fast. It's pretty hilarious. It's kind of funny. What this did result in, though, apparently, was a pushback. So as opposed to next week, that's apparently not happening. And that is because essentially of, I guess, this issue of rogue miners. Possibly. This was posted an hour ago by the same Twitter user, said we need to push the TTD back due to some miners mining with GPUs. This is a good drill for us as it tests how an issue on mainnet in the last second can be mitigated. So we have some rogue miners out there doing the Lord's work. Just jokes. Let them test. I'm just going to say it. Don't go figure out how to mine to the testnet. You know, don't go build a node in VMware on Ubuntu and set a GPU to mine to it. Don't do that. Don't do that to them. But it's pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. So, what does that mean as far as delays? Well, to be honest, it doesn't mean much because we still have the big glaring issue of the 2 attacks on proof of stake in general that have not been addressed yet, to the best of my knowledge. I've been tracking that. There also has been no response to it from the official dev team that I have found. In particular, I'm waiting, of course, on that. So those attacks that we talked about, earlier on the show, those are the ones that are going to have to really get resolved to move the merge. These types of delays are minuscule little delays that aren't going to essentially affect it that much. What they're trying to imitate, of course, is going to be that proof of work merge over to proof of stake. And apparently there are some rogue miners that are having fun and messing with them. I didn't know that they had, I thought, and this is how I would have set it up. I don't know. Maybe I'm just silly, but I would have had like a blacklist and a whitelist of who could connect to the testnet and mine. And then that would be all within my little group. But maybe all the devs sold their GPUs and they don't have any to do this with. That's a joke. I'm pretty sure they have some GPUs they could do this with. I don't understand why there's not, but I don't understand a lot of the decisions and like basic stuff that happens within the Ethereum core dev team. So it is what it is. Let's talk about mining profitability for the week. Local miners account right here on Crazy Pool. For the last hour, 5.6 gigahash a second. Last 6 hours, 5.53. Reported 5.79. We have 17 rigs online. And here's for the last month. Yesterday, we did 0.075 ETH. We're back down. We're dropping back down. Oof, it hurts. 193 US dollars is what we made yesterday. And that is with 5.5 gigahash. And then as far as today so far, it's looking better. I love this. We're at 0.05, meaning we should have a 0.09 to 0.01 or 0.1 day on Ethereum today. But yesterday was definitely a rough day. Why is that usually on Crazy Pool? Does it act like that? That's because we're dependent on the amount of blocks that Crazy Pool finds and the size of those blocks. Clearly, more blocks are being found today. We have seen, an increase a little bit of pool hash rate, but it's nowhere near what it was when I first started mining here a while back, which was the 2.7 terahash a second. a lot of the problems that people are having, and I think that specifically with Crazy Pool, is a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation. And the way that they've configured the pool is to work through essentially the NiceHash protocols, because this allows essentially the miners to get better rewards. But what that does to the mining side, the miner side, is cause a lot of confusion on selecting those stratums. And essentially what you need to be aware of is if you're trying to mine the Crazy Pool, you need to be coming down here and seeing what their settings are. For example, like if you do LOL miner, we have the wallet put in here. We're just going to generate it. The important part, let's see if it's here, is this at the end. And each miner is a little different. And as you can see, what it says here is the ETH stratum equals ETH v1. So it is specified. It's if you go to mine Crazy Pool and you just put in, you know, the worker address and the pool address, it's not going to do it. And so I think it's very important for people to understand that if you're going to Crazy Pool, there is this extra caveat. What that does result in is when the pool is working good and we're getting a lot of blocks, I'm on average making more on Crazy Pool. It's just a configuration issue. And the other thing about that is each miner is different. So as you can see, they specify the stratum with the proto switch on Gminer. They have done a good job on this generation for this for you. And then for the most part, HiveOS and LOL Miner, Team Red Miner, and a few others have already started auto adding that. If you select Crazy Pool, they will add these switches. But if you're having connection issues within HiveOS, make sure that it actually did add those switches within there. And then you'll be able to easily mine, or more easily mine. The other neat thing about Crazy Pool is they have the jackpot system. At any time, any size miner can get an additional 0.1 ETH, and that is, you know, every 3 days, I believe it is, every few days or so, you have the jackpot, and it's pretty cool. Essentially, you can have basically a chance to make an extra 0.1 ETH, which is not insignificant at all. So there's that. That's my plug for Crazy Pool. I'm not sponsored by them. In fact, I'll give, for full transparency, and you can talk to the dev, he did try to, and I was very adamant, I was very not happy with it, but he did try to offer basically some sort of partnership where he would pay me a portion of the mining fees, the mining pool fees. I put a hard no on that. I squashed that. So this is all, actually, I've had more arguments with the dev than any dev of any pool in existence. I have the receipts. I've had more arguments with him than anybody else. So take it from me, like me being over here, that is stuffing my personal pride and my personal ego, because that's kind of where I've been. Full transparency, that's where we've been at. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that that did happen. Now, from an ethical standpoint, like, I understand that, like, if I was running a pool, I would be reaching out to Red Panda Mining, Bitsby Trippin, and everybody trying to find sponsorships. That's what I would do. It's just personally on this channel, due to that actually directly affecting my viewers and basically having potential for me to misguide them, I don't take pool sponsorships. I don't take coin sponsorships. I'm trying to make sure that we're above board here. So there you go. All right, let's go ahead. And I do, look, as an example, I want to make sure that, like, you guys understand, like, we talk about, like, having arguments and stuff with them. We can have disagreements. Everybody can. And the important part is that, like, that doesn't affect the way you treat people, even the people you argue with, right? So maintaining empathy, all this sort of stuff. This is all stuff that, like, in my personal life, I've definitely had to, like, try to get better at. And I have to do that on YouTube in the public life as well. So let's take a look at what to mine. Calculate this out. RTX 3090. We are at, let's see, Ethereum at $3.22 a day after power. That's actually pretty far down. So interestingly, we're definitely making more on Crazy Pool today because we're already at 0.05. Rio. Well, let's fix this real quick. All right. Yeah, that does put Zell hash above Rio at $2.37 a day. If you mine through NiceHash. So once again, really a lot of people mining or renting hash power for Zell hash. And then you have Flux if you're not mining through NiceHash at $2.24 a day. Rio is really pumping a lot at $2.23 a day. This is really interesting. I've been noticing this for a while, and we used to actually run a Rio mining pool. Part of me kind of wants to spin one up again, but I also want to talk to Fire Ice UK and see what's going on with the project. From a privacy coin standpoint, it's pretty good. From the algorithm standpoint, while cookie cutter Crypto Night GPU, guess what? Crypto Night GPU runs pretty cool, runs pretty nicely. If he's planning on continuing development for this, and it really looks like that's a possibility, I kind of want to get in. And so give me some time. I'm going to get on Telegram. This one's an interesting one. I've always had like a soft spot there because that was like one of the first pools I ever built with my buddy Dane. And we ran it for a long time. And that one ran very, very well. Very, very well. Conflux on the Octopus at $1.96 a day after power. Ethereum Classic, $1.87 a day after power. Ergo, $1.96 a day after power. Raven coins way down here, $1.47 a day after power. Let's take a look at the 580 as we do. $580 is 75 cents a day after power on Ethereum, 42 cents a day after power on Firo, and 39 cents a day after power on Ethereum Classic. And then we have Ergo at 35 cents a day after power, and Ravencoin after 22 cents a day after power. All right, so we have the mining pools to go ahead and take a look at. Well, let's see if there's any huge changes. In Bitcoin, it doesn't look like there's really any huge changes. It's at 206 exahash a second. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum's still at that 1 petahash a second, so no huge changes. Let's take a look at Flux, see if we've gotten over that 2 mega solution barrier. We have not. It's still holding right at where it's holding. And it currently has a spike on 2mars.biz, which is an interesting pool I haven't heard of. And any other solo pool stuff going on? Any solo pool stuff going on? Yeah, 2miner solo. Sorry, 2miner solo. That's where the pump's coming from. Right now, as we speak, still pumping up. Somebody just continues to rent on 2miner solo for Flux. All right. Take a look at Ergo. And we're at 14.3 terahash a second, so no real changes there. Ethereum Classic. We're at 23.34 terahash a second. A little bit of a dip. A little bit of a dip. And
sorry, I'm still not sure about that.
Oh, are you not, Siri? Oh, blah, blah. All right. And let's take a look at Ravencoin. 3.78 terahash a second, under that 4 still. And difficulty dropping, but profitability not really returning. I'm a little worried about this project. I think that it's really difficult to mine it from a heat to power consumption problem. All right, let's take a look at profitability for the last 90 days on Ethereum mining pools. For the last 90 days, mining pool up in first, flex pool in second, crazy pool in third. For the last 60 days, Flex Pool in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Crazy Pool in third. For the last 30 days, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Flex Pool in third. For the last 21 days, Mining Pool Hub in first, Flex Pool in second, Nano Pool in third. For the last 14 days, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Crazy Pool in third. For the last 7 days, ZET in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, Flex Pool in third. For the last 3 days, Mining Pool Hub in first, Flex Pool in second, Crazy Pool in third. And for the last day, as we were seeing, we were having a good day. So Crazy Pool in first, Mining Pool Hub in second, and Nano Pool in third. And that is where we hit it. ASIC miners, Cadena miners still in the lead. KD6 at 136 US dollars a day. We definitely have a Cadena pump today. The KD5 at 92.11 today. And then from there, everything just starts getting kind of blah, right? Antminer L7, we expect that. You're at 55.78 a day if you're merge mining, essentially somewhere around there, because that's the mining rig rentals. That's what they're willing to rent it for. Probably a little over that if you're merge mining yourself directly, depending on which pools you choose. And so just keep that in mind. And then if you only mine Doge, well, you're insane, because why aren't you taking the extra Litecoin money? Come on. Why not? All right. And then as far as, you know, still more Cadena miners, we have the IB Link, the Goldshell KD2, pretty expected. And then from there, the Z15 still holding strong on Komodo and Zcash on 2 miners, which is pretty crazy. Luxor also for Komodo. I'm currently on Pirate Chain with my Z9 Mini, but I'm sitting here going, I probably need to swap it. Antminer D7 for that Dash, that good old Dash at $20 a day on Poolin. And then we do actually have a handshake miner, the HS3, popping up here at $15 a day, $15.81 a day on handshake. And if we're looking at Bitcoin mining, we're still sitting, you know, on the S19 Pro right around that $15 a day. So no real changes on Bitcoin mining. And I wouldn't expect there to be too many big shifts unless we get, you know, some sort of massive miner offline. All right. Are there any sales at BT Miners, who is today's sponsor? And we still have the S19 Pro down under $10,000 at 9,900 US dollars. You also have the KD box at 5,300, which is a couple thousand over what you could buy it directly from Goldshell, but they do have them in stock, and that's kind of the way this functions. You have, for the cheap but keeps running Bitcoin miner, the WhatsMiner N21S, known as the tank in the ASIC mining community, at 3,800 US dollars for 56 terahash. And you still have the coin miners. Mine is getting fully RMA'd at this point. So I'll let you guys know how the RMA process went or goes. We sent that off on Wednesday, and I'll time when we get it back in and if it works and blah, blah, blah. And we'll make a video and an updated video on what happened with that unit in particular. They still have their combo boxes and combo deals. If you're going to go through the combo deals, just make sure that you are calculating everything out with a mining calculator like MinerStat, getting the best combo that you can possibly get. Handshake's really a good bet right now with the HS5. The D7's not a bad bet. I'd probably skip the X5 and the LT5 though, in that combo. And these combos where they send you multiple, I'm not a huge fan of, because really it depends on, like, the 4 Goldshell X5s I'm probably not a huge fan of. But in this one, you know, these are the ones I would be interested in, right? The handshake, I guess not the A11, because, you know, you're worried about the merge, and then the D7, and then probably skip the rest. And I think the same would go for this too. So for the combo, the D7 plus the HS5 seems good, and the other two, personally, I'd probably skip. I'd definitely skip like the X5x4 unless the pricing is really, really good, because you're going to need a lot of power and it's not going to be that profitable. But the combos are always nice. Obviously, if you have extra stock, that's why they do that, right? So it makes sense. Let's go ahead and get into questions and answers. For questions and answers, what we have today, of course, is super chats are never required always appreciated and the easiest to read. Therefore, they will be answered first no matter what. Then, of course, at Son of a Tech, if you tag me, will highlight my name at least in orange, making it easier for me to pick out as a question and answer it. So that's the order of priority. If you don't tag me, there's definitely no guarantee that I will answer or even see your question. So just keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and pop out the chat. I wanted to say thanks, Crypto Mikkel, for being here. If you want to, basically what I'll do is add you as a moderator if you want to link your socials so everybody can find you. Crypto Mikkel is a content creator as well, and make sure you guys go give him a follow. Gandalf Gray says, ask Son of a Tech, what do you know about Paxos Gold crypto? On the website, it says holding the token grants you access to the physical gold held by them, which is serialized, but not sure how to claim it. So they have a claiming process. You can go into the details. Last I looked at it, you have to have a pretty significant amount of money within, or a pretty significant amount of Pax Gold in USD value before you can claim it. So keep that in mind. It's going to cost you quite a bit. I wanted to do it as a video, but you know, I think when I was looking at it, it was something like you needed to claim, you had to have like $30,000 worth of it to claim it. So it's really expensive to do it. That is a video I've always wanted to do, is claiming the gold from it. Unfortunately, it's a little out of my price range, right? Even like to just temporarily do it, risk that I don't get the gold, risk getting the gold and then trying to liquidate that gold. It seems very sketchy. So, you know, it is what it is. We have a $5 super chat from Dillsbury Flowboy. Says, at Son of a Tech, you said to get 60 Doge per day with the L3 Plus. I'm only getting 20-ish a day. 220 volt, 1200 watt power supply, and 465 hertz in overclocks. Temps at 60C. Thoughts? I feel like you might have some dead hash boards. I mean, even if we look at, let's go ahead and look at the calculator. Bum, 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 bum. I do have, and it's 67 Doge a day on average, and that is the mini Doge with the L3 Plus. The mini Doge almost makes none of that. But out of curiosity, L3 Plus. Now mine's flashed to the 550 mega hash a second, so it's somewhere in between here. You can flash yours as well, but how much Doge is it saying it makes? This is interesting. So it says you're losing Doge. And 100 mega hash isn't right. What is it? 580 mega hash a second. No. And it is saying about 20 Doge. So you're right. However, and hold on. Now I gotta go see what's going on with mine. Because I see the deposits coming into crypto.com pretty much every night. Let's look. I am on Poolin, by the way. And then I want to do what? Earnings. But I want Doge. Okay, I must be getting it mixed up. So I don't know why I'm getting, okay. So here is exactly what we're getting. Oop, let me see if I can do this right. Because I don't want that on there. All right. So here is exact. I haven't reviewed it in a while. And I think you are closer to the estimate. And maybe I'm just getting a deposit every 3 days or something. 39, 38, 37, 36. So this should be correct. Yeah, so the Doge payment is going 24 on the 10th, 21, 24, 23, 19, 25, 24, 20, 22, 22, 22, for the last few days. And I think it's paying me out maybe every other day, but that doesn't make sense. Hold on. Now I'm actually checking my crypto.com account. Because I do have it depositing into here. March 9th, 68 Doge. March 6th. Yeah, so I'm getting a payout every 3 days for 68 Doge. And that's where my confusion was coming in. So I'm getting a payout every 3 days for 68 Doge. But the confusion comes in that I'm getting paid out every day in Litecoin. So it's different. But Litecoin's paying me out 0.01 every day. So whenever I see the Doge one, I think I was just thinking, oh, we're just getting paid the same. But it's every 3 days for the payout on Dogecoin, which is like around 60 to 70, somewhere in between there. And then the Litecoin 0.01. So there we go. We are cleared up on that. All right. Let's see. Mark, I have not even checked my email, and I probably won't check it all weekend. I'm actually going to be shutting off all electronics this weekend. I need a break from everything. Welco said, Tech, how'd you manage to get your Caspa node synced? Yeah, I can give you that command. So, it takes a while. You need to open port 16111 on your router. And then, let me get you the command. In some cases, it won't start. And if it's not starting and you're having issues, you need to add I might have to find it later. You just need to rebuild it. If you get into the Discord, the commands are in there. I can't find the code right now, but hop in their Discord. Mark says, Tech noticed the hash rate drop off on Ethermine. I have not. I will go check that out right now. That would be kind of a good light at the end of the tunnel, right? But it's still not that much, right? What is their hash rate right now? Statistics. I mean, to me, it still looks like they're huge. I guess it's steady, huh? Slow and steady drop off. All the smaller miners. Where is the hash going? 2 miners? Oh, yeah. So we're seeing a migration off of Ethermine onto 2 miners is what it looks like. Cool. There you go. Andrea says, Tech Cadena was listed on Binance today. That's why it had some pump. Almost to $10, but now it's down around $7. Dang, that was a big pump then. Crypto Macau said, heads up on the KDA Box Pro is $4,500. Yeah, but I could say that different. $4,500, but sold out. I didn't even see it go on the shop, but all right. I'm behind the times. It's hard to keep up with everything, I feel like. Dan San says, Ask Novatech, do you know why the 2080 is the only card that always do better in flux? And do you think it is a good option to get a good price compared to the 30 series? It's always better on flux because from a memory perspective, it's not that much better than like a 2080 or something like that. But where its improvement is on the core. And flux profitability is very dependent on core and memory, and actually a good balance between the two. The 2080 Ti just happens to have some of the best balance between the two, right? And so it will generally always show that. Whereas like on the memory side of things, where you would see it compared to like a 2080 on ETH or something like that, it's not that impressive, right? So that's kind of why you see it like that. And that's also why you see like the RX 6000 series performing much better on flux than the previous generation AMD cards, because they've really improved that core clock. However, they still have like old memory, but it is what it is. Rent Free says, Ask Novatech, could you please help me figure out which firmware I should be downgraded to on your 3060 mobile version to help unlock the power limits? I don't know, man. I don't do a lot of laptop stuff. See you later, Mark. Charles says, Ask Novatech, hi, hope all is well. Are you still buying GPUs and growing your farm? I'm buying ASICs right now, and then we'll be back on the GPUs after 3 more ASICs. Scott Schultz says, hey, Son of a Tech, I'm eyeing the M21S. Have you bought a used ASIC at all? Any tips on what to look out for? So I have not. Yeah, I mean, I bought used ASICs, but all the used ASICs I bought were like off Amazon during the bear market, where like essentially I could pick up an L3 Plus for $175, but also have the Amazon buyer protection. If you're going out there, you know, like, obviously turn it on, make sure the fans spin up, make sure the power supply is not dead. Make them let you actually like log in, test the hash rate out. If they're not willing to let you test it, then don't buy it. That's what I would do if I was going. Patrick Gian says, Ask Novatech, 2 miners BTC payout is just over $4 per 100 mega hash, which I have found to be the most fiat profitable right now. I'd have to do the calculation, right? So yeah. Well, that wouldn't make much sense. Oh. The moonshine glass. Oh. I call them mason jars. I like them too. The BT Miners M21S, I'd perfectly feel safe because they are in New York and they'll help you if you have issues. Look, man, as far as all my viewers too, if you have issues with the BT Miners and you have issues with their service or something like that, you let me know and I'll call my contact and I'll say, what's going on, guys? What's happening? They're really trying super hard. They're super responsive. I know for a fact Lena's already helped other people other than just me that don't do YouTube channels and stuff. So I'd feel pretty comfortable with BT Miners. We're going to call it. I'm going to head to Jiu-Jitsu. I am going to try to check emails here when I do all my clipping later. So Mark, I'll try to get to it. That being said, the rest of the weekend, I'm going to try to shut off. I've been going hard. Pretty hard. Tomorrow, tonight we have T-ball. Tomorrow we have T-ball. Jiu-jitsu tomorrow. What else tomorrow? There's a lot of events tomorrow. Birthday parties, all that craziness. So tomorrow is definitely shut off, disconnect day, as long as I can get all of the clipping done. And then Spotify, make sure you keep an eye out on my Twitter account or here. I'll post it on the community tab as well. We should be going live on Spotify. Thanks everybody for watching. Be sure to hit the like, comment, subscribe down below. And I'll see you next Tuesday. Can't wait for Monday. Let's get it, boys.